She overheard the humans talking and asked a question. No one expected. The spaceship Unity's grace drifted calmly between stars, a symbol of peace between Earth and the alien Yalari Empire. Inside, the cafeteria was quiet, but busy. Trays clinked, boots echoed, and officers laughed softly over late-night snacks. Among them sat three humans, Daniel, Mira, and Josh, relaxing after a long shift. Daniel leaned back in his chair with a grin. "I'm telling you, humans are built different." Josh laughed. "What? Because you can run 5 laps and still flirt?" "No," Daniel said, "because we can mate every single day and not fall apart." The table burst into quiet laughter. Just across the room, seated at a small corner table, was Zara, a young Yalari biologist with soft gray skin, glowing yellow eyes, and a mind full of curiosity. She hadn't meant to eavesdrop. Yalari ears were simply too good. She had picked up every word. She blinked slowly, her fork frozen halfway to her mouth. Every day, she had studied human digestion, speech, even stress response. But not this. It didn't sound possible, or safe. Later, as the humans cleared their trays and stood up, Zara approached. Her long white robe flowed gently behind her. "Excuse me, Specialist Daniel?" she said softly. He turned and smiled. "Hey, Zara, what's up?" She tilted her head. "I heard your conversation during the meal about human mating frequency." Josh's eyes went wide. Mira nearly choked on her drink. Daniel tried to stay calm. Right. That was a joke. Kind of." Zara didn't blink. "I need to know. Is it true? Can humans engage in reproductive behavior every day without physical damage to their—" She paused, searching for the word tool. The silence was immediate. 2 engineers at the next table dropped their spoons. Someone coughed. Daniel's ears turned red. "Woo, what?" Zara repeated slowly and seriously. "Your tool. It does not break?" Mira was now covering her mouth, trying not to laugh. Josh muttered, "I can't believe this is happening." Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "Well, it's not exactly a tool, it's a part of our— Look, yes, human bodies can handle that. It's biology." Zara's brow furrowed. "No injuries? No overheating? No fractures?" Daniel choked on a laugh. "No, that's not usually a problem." Zara nodded, writing something into her datapad. "This is fascinating. Among Yalari males, the mating cycle requires 12 days of recovery. Repeated activity would cause nerve collapse or bone cracks." Daniel's eyebrows rose. "Bone cracks?" She nodded again. "It happened during war training once. 2 soldiers had to be carried to Med Bay." Now the entire cafeteria was listening. Mira leaned over. "So you're saying your people would literally break?" Zara answered simply, "Yes, which is why I find human durability impressive." She looked at Daniel again. "I request a formal interview. I would like to study this trait scientifically." Daniel nearly dropped his tray. Josh whispered, "Bro, you just became a science project." Later that day, Zara entered the med bay with her notes. Dr. Hanley, the human chief medic, greeted her. "Zara, heard you had a new research idea." She nodded seriously. "I believe human mating endurance may have defensive or evolutionary benefits. I would like to request full biological data from 3 volunteers." Dr. Hanley tried not to laugh. "I'll ask for permission." Meanwhile, back in the dorm quarters, Daniel paced. "This is insane," he muttered. "She's writing a thesis about my, Mira smirked. "At least she thinks you're durable." Josh grinned. "You're going to be famous in alien textbooks." But far away, deep in the Yalari Science Network, Zara uploaded a confidential report. Human reproductive stamina, early observations, frequency, daily potential, failure rate near 0. Emotional bond factor, unknown. Structural damage, unlikely. She ended with one final line. "Further study is required. Subject appears willing, though embarrassed." And as she closed the file, her eyes softened. She had wanted data, but she felt something else growing inside her. A new kind of curiosity. The alien scientists couldn't believe the human data. The Yolari science deck was always quiet. No laughter, no loud voices, only the soft hum of machines and the sound of data being typed and studied. But today, that silence was broken. Because Zara's report had reached the core biological review team. Daily mating capability? One elder biologist said, reading the screen. Another looked shocked. No nerve collapse, no muscular tearing, no bone fractures, a third added. They all turned slowly to Zara, who stood calmly in front of them with her data pad. Yes, she replied. I verified the information. 3 human males confirmed it. 1 provided voluntary visual proof through medical scan. The room went absolutely silent. Dr. Mehta, a senior Yolari with purple skin and glowing forehead ridges, leaned back in her seat. This is not evolution. This is madness. Zara stayed serious. It may be the reason humans bond so fast. Their bodies don't break after emotional contact. They grow stronger. Another scientist muttered, no cool-down time. This changes everything we believed about mammal-based stamina. Later that day, a private message reached the Earth-Yolari Alliance command channel, requesting permission to expand research on human biology. Focus area, reproductive durability. Reason, possible evolutionary advantages and cross-species understanding. The human ambassador on the ship, Dr. Lynn Vega, nearly dropped her coffee reading it. She called her assistant. Get me Daniel Carter. Meanwhile, Daniel sat in the crew gym, wiping sweat off his face after a short workout. He had no idea that his body had become a galactic mystery, but he was about to find out. A small Yolari assistant arrived at the door. Daniel Carter, you are requested on Science Deck Alpha. He groaned. Again? I already answered their questions. They have more. Daniel stepped into the lab an hour later. 10 Yolari scientists stood behind glass. Zara stood in front of him. She nodded politely. Thank you for returning. Daniel raised an eyebrow. You make it sound like I had a choice. One scientist called from behind the glass. We'd like to measure your resting hormone levels after 3 consecutive days of partnered activity. Daniel coughed. Excuse me? Zara looked calm. You don't need to actually perform. We can simulate the effects with controlled virtual testing. He sighed. That somehow sounds worse. The next hour was a mess of scanners, glowing lights, and far too many graphs. Zara stood close, watching every result. Daniel could feel her curiosity like a physical weight. At one point, she asked, Do you feel pain when emotionally bonded? He frowned. What kind of question is that? She explained. Yolari males often grow weak after deep connection. Some even lose the ability to fight. Daniel looked her in the eye. No, humans usually fight harder, for the ones they care about. Zara paused. That answer did something to her. She didn't write it down. She just remembered it. Hours later, the report was complete. The scientists stood around a large screen, charts, numbers, heart rate, recovery speed, hormone patterns. One word appeared in bold. Exceptional. Dr. Mehta looked amazed. Human biology is durable, adaptable, regenerative. It's not just physical strength. It's emotional drive, another said. Maybe that's why they survive so many wars. Their bodies and hearts don't quit. As Zara walked Daniel back to his quarters, she was quiet. He looked at her. Still writing your report? She shook her head. No. I'm thinking. About what? She hesitated, then said softly. About what it would feel like. To bond with someone who doesn't break. Daniel didn't speak, but for the first time he realized this wasn't just a science project for her anymore. The council demands an explanation, and the human responds in the most unexpected way. The Grand Council room aboard Unity's Grace was rarely used. It was reserved for serious discussions, conflict negotiations, cross-species emergencies, or matters that could threaten peace. Today the topic on the table was humans, and one in particular, Daniel Carter. 12 alien representatives sat around a long crystal table, Yalari, Tarnin, Brack Quell, even one silent observer from the insectoid Vexel hive. The human ambassador, Dr. Lynn Vega, stood beside Daniel, clearly nervous. Zara sat near the side, her data tablet in her hands full of files she had collected over the last week. The Yalari High Elder, Soren Thal, stood and spoke first. Explain to us, human, how your species can withstand repeated, physical connection without serious injury. Daniel cleared his throat. He looked around the room. Was this really happening? He took a deep breath and replied, I'm not a scientist, I don't know all the biology. But I can tell you what I do know. Our bodies aren't just built to survive. He paused. They're built to connect. Murmurs filled the room. Soren, Thal narrowed his eyes. Explain. Daniel nodded. On Earth we bond deeply. We build relationships with more than words. We share pain, joy, grief, and love. Our ability to touch, to hold, to comfort. It's not weakness. It's how we grow stronger. He glanced at Zara. It's how we become more than ourselves. The Brackwell commander growled. So, you're saying mating is emotional? Daniel didn't flinch. Yes. Physical contact means more to us. It's trust. It's commitment. That's why we don't break. Because we don't go into it lightly. And when we do, we heal together. The Vexel Hive observer buzzed softly. Emotion equals efficiency? Unlikely. Zara finally stood. Actually, it's not only likely, it's true. All heads turned toward her. Zara walked to the center of the room and placed her tablet on the table. She pressed a button. Charts and graphs appeared in the air, showing human hormonal cycles, tissue recovery rates, and neural bonding patterns. She spoke clearly. I ran full tests. Humans recover faster when emotionally supported. Their minds and bodies respond stronger in committed connection than in isolation. She turned to face the Yalari Council. Even after physical exhaustion, human subjects showed measurable resilience. Their strength doesn't come from force, it comes from feeling. The council went quiet. Then Soren Thal spoke again. Why does this matter? Zara answered without hesitation. Because we have always judged strength by what breaks. She looked at Daniel. But humans show us something else. Strength can be found in what bends and still holds. Dr. Vega stepped forward. If we want true alliance, we must stop seeing humans as strange and start seeing them as whole. The vote was held, and for the first time, the Yalari Council approved a cross-species emotional study, centered not on war or control, but on understanding. Later, outside the chamber, Daniel stood with Zara in the hallway. He rubbed the back of his neck. That went better than I expected. She smiled softly. You showed them something science couldn't. What's that? Heart. He chuckled. You planning to write that in your report? Zara looked at him for a long second. No, she whispered. I want to keep that one for myself. She tries to understand human emotion, but what? She feels surprises. Even her, the ship was quiet that night. Most of the crew had gone to their quarters. The halls were dim. Only the soft hum of the engine echoed through the walls. Zara sat alone in the science lab, staring at her datapad. Was full of reports, graphs, hormone charts, brain activity scans, all about human connection. But none of it explained what was happening inside her. She touched her chest. Her heart beat faster now, sometimes for no reason, especially when she was around Daniel. It wasn't fear. It wasn't curiosity. It was something else. Earlier that day, Daniel had smiled at her, just a simple smile, but it stayed with her. Why? She had studied 100 species, observed mating dances and rituals, listened to theories about touch and emotion. But now, she was feeling it herself. and no chart could explain it. She opened a private log on her datapad and spoke softly. Personal. Note. Encrypted. Human connection is deeper than I believed. When they speak kindly, something happens in the chest like warmth without heat. I do not know what to name this feeling. I only know it began with one man. Just then the door opened behind her. She turned. Daniel stood in the doorway holding 2 cups of tea. He smiled again. Can't sleep? She nodded. Too many questions. He walked over and handed her 1 cup. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I'm good at late-night talks. They sat together at the edge of the lab bench. The lights were soft. The moment was quiet. Daniel took a sip of his tea. Zara watched him, then asked, "Why do you smile when you look at me?" Daniel paused, then answered honestly, "Because you make me feel seen, like I matter." She blinked. "No one has said that to me before." He looked at her. "Well, you matter." Zara turned away quickly, hiding the sudden warmth in her cheeks. This wasn't part of any experiment. This wasn't research. This was real. "I don't understand what I'm feeling," she admitted quietly. "My skin warms when you speak. My thoughts slow down when you're near, but I don't want to leave." Daniel leaned closer. "That's what we call a connection," Zara whispered. "Is this what you humans call love?" Daniel didn't answer right away. He just reached out and gently touched her hand. The gesture was small, but Zara felt it like a current through her body. She didn't pull away. She let it stay. Later that night, back in her quarters, Zara stared out the window at the stars. She finally had her answer. She now understood why humans didn't break. Because love wasn't weakness. It was their shield. And maybe, just maybe, she was starting to grow her own. A rival alien. Tries to discredit the human, but the truth is too powerful. News of Zara's report had spread beyond the Unity's grace. Other Yalari scientists, military officers, and leaders across the star systems were talking about it. Many were curious, but some were angry, and one of them, Commander Reth Varn, decided it had to stop. He arrived on the ship unannounced, tall, sharp, wearing armor that made everyone step aside. He marched straight to the lab, where Zara was running, a scan. "You are damaging our reputation," he said coldly, "and embarrassing our people." Zara stood calmly. "With facts? With foolish ideas," Reth snapped. "That humans are stronger than us because they love." He spat the word like it was poison. Word of his arrival spread fast. Daniel heard about it while repairing a coolant valve in the engineering bay. By the time he got to the science deck, Reth was already in front of the entire bio committee, pointing at Zara's data files. "This is manipulation," Reth said. "The human used charm, not strength." Daniel stepped into the room. "I'm right here if you want to say that to my face." Reth turned, grinning. "Of course. The famous human who touches hearts instead of winning battles." He walked closer to Daniel. "You're not special. You're just soft." Daniel looked him in the eye. "I don't need to fight you to prove I'm strong." Reth smirked. "No, but maybe I should test your emotional power with a real challenge." Zara stood between them. "No, that's not how this works." Reth ignored her. "Tell me, human, if someone you cared about was taken from you, would your precious emotions still make you strong?" Daniel answered calmly. "They'd make me unstoppable." The room fell silent. No one moved. Then Zara stepped forward. "Commander, if you think strength is only about pain and control, then you haven't learned anything." She pulled up her newest scan, a visual comparison of human and Yalari stress response. Humans survive longer under emotional strain. Their hearts heal faster. Their minds endure guilt, loss, and even love, without failure. She turned to Daniel. "And Daniel didn't give me weakness. He gave me the courage to feel." Reth's jaw tightened. He looked at the council. "This is not science. This is bonding. She's compromised." Zara held her ground. "Then maybe we should all be compromised." The bio committee voted. Reth was removed from the study. Zara's research was approved for galaxy-wide publication. And Daniel, he became the first human ever invited to speak at the Yalari Emotional Sciences Conference. That night, on the observation deck, Daniel stood beside Zara. The stars glowed outside the windows. He looked at her. "You didn't have to defend me," she smiled gently. "You weren't the one who needed defending." Because what she had learned wasn't just about humans. It was about herself and her people, and the idea that maybe feeling was not a flaw, but a form of strength. A crisis hits the ship, and it's the human who saves them all. It began with a flicker. A small light on the control panel blinked red, then another, and another. Within minutes, the peaceful ship Unity's Grace was no longer quiet. Alarms echoed through the halls. Warning, core reactor unstable, temperature rising. Panic spread fast. Yalari officers shouted commands. Doors sealed shut. Lights flashed, but no one knew what caused the failure, and worse, no one knew how to stop it. Zara was in the science lab when the power cut out. She stumbled, catching herself on a table. Emergency lights flickered on. Red and white. Harsh. Blinding. A voice shouted down the hallway. "Reactor breach in progress. We have 15 minutes. She ran. Straight to engineering. And there, through smoke and steam, stood Daniel. His sleeves were rolled up. His hands were covered in grease. His forehead glistened with sweat. He had already opened the main panel and was typing commands into the manual override. "Daniel!" she called out. He looked back, panting. "It's a cascade overload," he said. "Cooling. Systems locked out. Automatic failsafes aren't responding." Zara's eyes widened. "That means, if I don't reset the internal pressure valves," he said, "this ship goes boom." She ran to his side. "Let me help." He shook his head. "No. I need you to seal the door if I don't make it back out." Zara grabbed his arm. "No. You said humans get stronger when they care about someone, so don't leave me." Daniel looked at her, really looked at her, then nodded. "Okay, let's do it together." They crawled through the maintenance shaft, pipes hissing above their heads. The heat was rising fast. Metal burned to the touch. Daniel reached the manual valve and pulled with all his strength. "Nothing." "Come on," he growled. Zara pushed with him. The valve groaned, then, finally, snapped open. Steam burst out. The warning sirens dropped an octave. Daniel dropped to his knees, coughing. Zara checked his pulse. He was alive. The reactor lights turned green again. Reactor stabilized. Crisis averted. Cheers echoed across the ship. But in the quiet, dark shaft, Zara didn't celebrate. She just wrapped her arms around Daniel. He smiled weakly. "You didn't seal the door," she whispered. "I would never leave you." Later in the medbay, Daniel rested on the recovery bed. Zara sat beside him, her fingers gently holding his. "You're more than a subject now," she said softly. "More than data. More than strength." He looked up at her. "What am I then?" She smiled, eyes glowing. "You're mine." And for the first time, a human wasn't just part of an experiment. He was part of a heart. She once asked a question out of curiosity. Now she calls him her mate. The ship Unity's Grace had returned to calm. Systems were stable, lights were soft again, and the crew walked the halls with quiet pride. Everyone knew who had saved them, the human Daniel Carter. But this story wasn't just about the hero. It was also about the girl who once asked a question that shocked the galaxy, Zara. She had started as a scientist, logical, focused, curious. She had studied humans with cold data and careful reports. Now she studied Daniel's heartbeat, not with machines, but with her hand resting on his chest as he slept peacefully. In the medbay, when he woke, he found her watching him. She smiled. "Still in one piece?" He grinned. "You expected otherwise?" Zara leaned closer. "I thought human bodies were strong, but your spirit is stronger." Later that day, the Grand Science Council sent her a message. Your research is complete. Please return home to present your findings. She stared at the screen for a long time, then pressed one button. Decline. Daniel was surprised. You're not going back? She shook her head. My people can learn from what I send, but I want to stay. Why? Zara looked at him, her voice calm but full of emotion. Because I asked a question and found an answer that changed me. He waited. She stepped forward and took his hand. I asked how your species could connect so often without breaking, but now I understand. You don't break, because you bond. She placed his hand on her heart. And now, so do I. Daniel's voice was quiet. Is that a Yalari way of saying something? She smiled softly. It means I choose you. In Yalari tradition, no word existed for love like humans had, but the word for chosen one meant more than just affection. It meant trust. It meant future. It meant mate. As the ship floated through the stars, word of the human and the Yalari girl spread. Not a scandal, not a joke, but a new chapter. Two hearts from different worlds, one brave enough to ask a question, and the other brave enough to answer. Zara no longer needed her data pad. Her greatest discovery now walked beside her, and every time Daniel smiled at her, she smiled back, because now she understood. Some bonds are meant to be tested every day and never break.